Going live. Okay, you're good now.
All right. Let's call this meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education to order. For the roll call tonight, all members are present, 4 in person and 1 electronically. And we'll move on to the opportunity for audience and public comment. Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, there is just one, and it's from Nicole Blevins. Hi, I would like to share my 2020 graduates and my own thoughts on the graduation ceremony this year. As much as I would love to see my child walk across the stage and receive his diploma the way it should have been, unfortunately, it would not be the same. The emotions and excitement that they would all have that day just would not be there, simply because the majority have already received their diplomas and moved on with life. My son, and I'm sure along with many others, would not be able to attend due to college, jobs, military, etc. I feel the only way to be truly fair to all of our 2020 graduates is to split the project graduation money that I myself helped in working very diligently to earn money between all of our graduates of 2020, if that's an option. Personally, I don't feel that it would be fair to hold a graduation ceremony or project graduation if all graduates couldn't attend and only a few reap the benefits. Sincerely, Nicole Blevins, parent of a 2020 graduate.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. We will move on to our instructional and equity task force updates with Mr. Asher, please.
Really close this time.
It is very close. That's right.
It's cozy.
All right, we'll go with that, cozy. Good evening, good to see you all once again. My update will be relatively brief as I'm going to yield some of my time to Ms. Cook and Ms. Kaiser here in just a moment. First off, on the instructional side of things, this has made the news recently in terms of assessment and the state assessment, so I did want to update you on that. We will be taking K-Prep 3rd through 11th grades. Our window will start on May 10th. It's a little bit different in years past in that we can use the entire window, and also fortunately, once we got the whole outline of what the assessments would be, it has been pretty significantly reduced. So nearly all of the content area tests are 60 minutes in length, max, with the exception of the writing assessments, which are 90 minutes. And again, that will be 3rd through 11th grade. They're the normal regular areas that they usually have assigned, but we obviously will be doing that statewide, nationally. Ours coming up on May 10th. Also under assessment, we recently, just last week, had our ACT day for our juniors. Nearly all were able to finish on that day, but there are some makeup still in progress at this point. Outside of assessment, Best Practice Academy that we run for several years now. We will be reinstituting that, bringing that back. Last year, for obvious reasons, we had to minimize what we were able to offer in terms of support and training to our teachers, but we are pretty much full scale, or planning to again this year. The first session will be June 1st through 4th, and then a second session just before school starts back, August 2nd through 6th. And essentially, we always try to have a variety of sessions, but all targeting foundational practices that we have here in Woodford. And so we will have presenters from both our own presenters, internal. Recently, Dr. Jones sent out a survey of staff that may be willing to present at this, but we also will be bringing in some outside sources for training as well. One specific area that we've identified and are in the works of is making sure that mental health and wellness is a target, is a focus for these 2 sessions, and that is for both students and staff alike. So we've been in conversations about what that'll look like and what we can offer through best practice. And then finally, in terms of instructional, I talked last month about our virtual academy plans for next year. So we've continued to work that out and what that will look like, how we'll get the information out, And this Thursday will be our first survey of this, strictly just to gauge interest. Elaine Bailey helped us put together a nice infographic that kind of outlines everything, K through 12. Some of it is general information because the key piece is how many students might be interested. We really can't get into the details of student-teacher ratio or what teachers would be assigned until we know that. So there will be an email going out district-wide to all parents, not just current virtual, all, that will have that outline, as well as the Google Form survey, just strictly to fill out, and I want to emphasize that's not a commitment. It's just to say if they are interested, and to help us plan next steps after that. So that is the extent of my instructional update. Any questions on those topics?
Just a couple.
Sure.
I don't know, on the new board member orientation, did you get to go over a little bit about what the Best Practice Academy is and how that works for the teachers? I didn't know if they
I
knew.
don't know if we went over that.
Not those specifics. I mean, some of the foundational pieces, but not how the training works.
Maybe just give them a broad overview
Sure.
of what that is and how it's unique to
Sure.
Woodford County.
But teachers are required to get professional development hours in several years. How many years have we had?
It's a lot.
4 or 5.
4 or 5. We actually added a professional development day just to make sure that they had the flexibility to attend. And what it is, we're offering things that are focus areas for our district. Year after year, we keep some of those same foundations, those that I covered with you, to make sure that there are update trainings on those, as well, and available for new staff members as well, so that they can understand those foundational elements. So all staff attend a minimum of 6 hours, which is 1 day's worth of professional development from Best Practice Academy, but the vast majority do more than that, upwards of 12 to 18, so 2 or 3 days as part of Best Practice Academy.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that they
Sure.
they knew what we were talking about. And then on the K-Prep,
Uh-huh.
will that data be more just a measuring stick kind of year? How will that be valuable to you?
That's what's been communicated, yes. It will be reported through school report card is the last I heard. Have you heard anything otherwise? So it will be reported. However, we're not accountable. If it's reported, you kind of are accountable, in my opinion, but there won't be an accountability score put to that or anything along those lines. So yes, it's just meant as a measuring stick coming off a pandemic where we stand.
And will that affect how we do rewards for the scoring for the students?
We haven't thought that far ahead.
Okay.
I don't know that we will, given that it is a reduced amount, given that we're not accountable. But to be honest, we haven't really gotten that far as what that will look like.
Okay.
The good thing is we have a lot of time on that because we won't get results till typically August.
Okay.
And so we've got plenty of time to determine and get more information about that.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you for that, Ms. Springate.
I just out of curiosity on the testing that's coming up, the virtual students would also do that. How would that work?
Yes, we have to make our, I can't remember the line, but basically make your best effort to test your virtual students.
Okay.
The plan would be to bring them in most cases, is that right? To schedule appointments, bring them in. You'll have a testing location, classrooms for them to come in and take the assessments.
Gotcha. I just wondered because I thought, I don't know. I mean, I guess it is what it is, and we do our best.
Right.
So, well, thank you for
all
that.
but 4 kids come in for the ACT.
Oh wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Ms. Richardson, you probably couldn't hear that. Mrs. Jones, Dr. Jones, sorry, said that we had all but 4 juniors came in for the ACT test.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Do you have anything further, Ms. Springate?
No, thank you.
Ms. Richardson?
No, thank you.
Ms. McHale?
No thanks.
Ms. Glass?
No, thanks.
All right.
And
Thank
then
you.
just one quick note
Oh,
on our equity work.
Absolutely, I'm sorry.
Tomorrow, actually, after school into the evening, is our next training for our school leadership teams. We have district level and then school level. You've heard me mention the modules. So tomorrow is our next one on culturally responsive instruction, which I mentioned this last month. will lead into all of our professional development. So we make sure we have that lens to it as well. So that'll be tomorrow after school. And that's all I have.
Very good, thank you. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I didn't mean
That's all right.
to rush you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next thing is kind of a return to normal for us. I know I'm excited, and I'm sure the other board members are too. We haven't been able to hear from our individual schools because of the pandemic, and that's something that is one of the joys of being a board member, is going to the schools and hearing about the special things that each of our schools do for their students and for the culture within their school. And we have Miss Kaiser here from Huntertown Elementary to talk to us about her school.
Yay! I'm
Yeah.
so excited. Hi, guys.
Hi.
If you do not know me, and I think there's only one of you, I'm Miss Kaiser. I'm the principal at Huntertown. It's nice to meet you, Miss Glass. Thank you so much for giving me when I don't know you, Piper. It's nice to meet you.
I was a Southside kid.
I won't hold that against you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity just to share a little bit about some things that we're doing this year at Huntertown. Thank you, Bob. It has been a different year, but I'm very blessed to say that our staff has come together and has done a remarkable job for our students. I have a great leadership team consisting of my admin dean, Miss Amanda Nugent, and my guidance counselor, Sarah Merle, who have worked tirelessly with me this year and our staff to do what's best for kids. There's a lot of words on this PowerPoint, but I'm just going to hit the highlights. I mean, if you know anything about Huntertown, you know that we are a relationship school. I believe, and so does my staff, that first and foremost, you have to build relationships with kids. And if you do that, then everything else will fall in place afterwards. So it's been a little bit more challenging this year to build those relationships. So what we had to do was to focus on, first of all, making sure that everybody was safe, and then balancing the academics with the relationships and the social emotional. It was more of a challenge when we first started. Bob, you can, I'm not gonna just blink at you, there you go. It was more of a challenge at first because we hadn't seen the kids yet this year. So our first goal was to just focus on the safety and making sure that every part of the building, Bob, you can track that, every part of the building was safe. These are some kids on their paw prints in the hallways, taking temperatures before lunch. The top table is specifically tagged for lunch. The X's say you can't sit there, and the paw prints say you can. So it helped, the bottom pictures are kindergartners, so it helped our kindergartners know where can I sit and where am I not allowed to sit. So it keeps them socially distanced and it keeps them safe. There were a lot of other areas that we specifically put some things in place. I don't have pictures of those because I just wanted to highlight a few. But after we worked on the safety and making sure that all kids were safe, that's when we started building in the next layer, which was the academics and the social emotional. Before we came back in person, one of the things that was really special was that our guidance counselor took time to do guidance lessons virtually with our kids every week. And in addition to that, our special area teachers felt so passionate about getting to spend time with the kids because they didn't always get to spend time with them, that they did a second lesson with them. So when they were virtual, they got more social emotional lessons and got to make those connections and build those relationships with staff before they came back in person. So you can track Bob. So when we finally did come back in person and while we were virtual, we did what was called a daily check-in. I am not the only school that does it. I know Tiffany does it, and I think the other two also do a form of it. These are two specific examples. The smiley faces and emojis are from our intermediate kids. And then the zones of regulations, which is the colors at the bottom, are more primary because we work with our kids on understanding their emotions. So these are done daily, and what happens with these is our guidance counselor and the classroom teacher get to see what kind of mood the kids are in the morning. Do I need to check in on that child when we're virtual? Do I need to make a phone call? Do I need to contact the parents? What do I need to do to support the emotional stability of students, whether we're virtual or in person? This is just a little bit of data from our counseling sessions. Our guidance counselor, Sarah Merle, sees a lot of kids and is very intentional about making sure she meets the needs of the kids. This is our data from February. If you will look at the primary, and you will be able to access this because Angel's going to put it on the website, but the biggest primary reason that children see the counselor or did in February was for anxiety. So we have a lot of children that are stressed in this world of pandemic right now, and our guidance counselor is doing a great job of pulling those kids in and meeting their needs. She saw that a lot of those students were in the intermediate grades, so she started a lunch bunch with our intermediate girls that were having anxiety issues. She also has some other groups that she does, but that's the one that I just wanted to highlight because that was the highest area with our kids in February. So after we keep them safe and we deal with their emotional needs, then we can address the academics. So after we put all of those in place, we looked at our essential skills, and Brian Asher did a great job of leading that work and making sure that our teachers knew specifically what we had to focus on this year. So with our PLC work, the teachers focused on the essential skills. We took data from formative assessments, our MAP data, and looked at the students who truly needed skills, whether that was students who did not gain the skills in the spring because we started last March with virtual learning, or whether it's students that were academically low anyway. So we started working with those kids. We targeted 2 specific groups, and Bob, you can track it. We targeted 2 specific groups. Oh, there's our, if you have never seen that pyramid, it's just focusing on Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3.
Excellent.
Yes. Here's my babies. Those are some wonderful students learning at Huntertown. And one thing you'll notice here is they have their individual seats. They are socially distanced. They are writing on their desks, and they have their personal manipulatives, but they are working hard. And that is our Tier 1 instruction. So based on our data, we recognize 2 groups of children. Our students who were in our highest group, which is 80% and higher, regressed. A huge percent of them. We had a huge percent of our students that were in the lower quartile that regressed. So what we did is we were very intentional about targeting those 2 groups. We brought in a retired teacher who primarily works with the students that just needed that acceleration. They are all on track now. She's continuing to work with them, but that was the group that was the easiest to catch up because a lot of them were just ones that did not read at home or didn't focus as much on academics over the summer. So the second group, and you can track it, Bob, the second group was our kids that really struggled, our Tier 2 and our Tier 3 kids. This is just the number of kids that we have in our Tier 2, which is the black numbers, and Tier 3 at each grade level, which is the red numbers. If you'll notice, and I highlighted the top 3, we had some kids coming in at kindergarten that definitely need some double dose of instruction. But the first grade and second grade are those kids that may have missed out on some essential skills in the spring. So those are the kids that we are progress monitoring weekly. We are hitting them with extra skills each week. They have an intervention group. If they are in the red, they have 2 intervention groups. They have a tier 2 and a tier 3, so that we can do everything we can to catch them up and give them the ability to be on grade level. You can track it, Bob. This is just, and you don't need to read this. This is first grade reading. So these are all of the students that have some kind of intervention in first grade reading, and that's a lot. And that just shows you that the kids in the spring missed out on a chunk of learning. So it's our job right now to make sure that we give them everything we can and are as intentional as possible to catch those kids up. Amanda Nugent is, again, my admin dean, and she has this year almost become the RTI coach because she has worked tirelessly on making sure that every child that is in tier 2 and tier 3 has an intervention that's based on their deficit. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we're doing this year. It's a lot of hard work, but I couldn't do it without every person that's in my building. They are working hard alongside me and with me, and it's all for the kids.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
That's great to see all of that. Thank you very much for putting that together. It's neat for us to be able to see all of the things that you're tracking and the actions you're taking for that. Thank you for that. And to everyone.
You could come visit us.
Can we now?
I don't know, Kelly. Once Kelly gives you permission.
When we have the green light, yes.
When Kelly gives you permission, you can come and visit us. We would love to have that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Our next presenter is Miss Tiffany Cook, the principal at Simmons Elementary.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Tiffany.
Hello.
All right, so let's get
Yeah, we got it.
Almost.
or I can talk about Elaine's again.
Just tell me next slide or whenever.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for this opportunity. It was kind of exciting to be able to go back through and see what we're proud of and what we've accomplished a lot this year. We've done a lot this year. And so it was kind of neat to be able to go back and focus on some of that. So you can hit the first one. I started usually, but one of the best things about these presentations when I usually get to do them is the kids singing or the kids' performances. Yes. I'm not singing, so I did the next best thing, and I put a bunch of cute pictures of kids in here. Today was our first day back in the special area classrooms, and it was the best day we could have imagined. Kids were on the playground, and we had kids in specials today, so it was a great day. So these are just some pictures of our kids doing what they do during specials. We've been able to keep our Top Dogs programs going, so they're painted their handprints on the walls. You can see them dancing in the classrooms there. Go to the next one. These are we figured out a way very creatively and with everybody's approval for the 5th graders to be able to play their guitars. So they were able to go in, and each kid had their own individual one, and we followed all the protocols, but they got to create music they were in their classrooms, but they still got to create music. So that was a great sound. Well, it wasn't a great sound, but it was it was close to a great sound.
It will one day be.
It will one day be kind of like with recorders, you know. They were able to get Parachute Day in. Everybody loves Parachute Day. Yes. And then Miss Bomer, our music teacher, who's phenomenal, has the kids up and moving and dancing all the time. So there's more cute kids dancing. So. There's our Top Dogs, and it's hard to see, but in that second picture you can see them using their individual musical instruments. So they were still practicing their drumming and practicing there's a better name for those, but I don't know what it is. But they got to do a lot of the same things they would do normally in the classroom, just looked a little different. So I think there's one more cute picture. Nope, that's it. All right. So normally we have our big rocks and we focus on those, and while yes, we've done those, we had to kind of adjust our goals this year. So these were our goals this year. We start every newsletter out with these goals, and these are the things that I've asked the teachers to focus on this year. Much different than our typical big rocks, but I felt like this described our year this year, and we added number 6 in there about September to give ourselves grace, because everything wasn't going to be perfect the first time that we tried it, but we've sure tried very hard. So those are our goals for this year. Go to the next one. So one of the problems that we knew we were going to have when we lost, so you think about a kindergarten class that lost, from March on, that's when they're really practicing, learning their letter formation. We use lots of multisensory things where they share materials, where they're constantly interacting. I mean, it's a kindergarten classroom, so they lost out on all that. Our first grade kids are practicing writing words with multisensory things, and so they missed out on all that. So we knew that was going to be a big problem. Not only that, we already had a deficit in our first grade. We knew that coming in. So one of the problems, we knew that our incoming first and second grade students had missed foundational skills. So our goal there was to provide, we knew we had to do something different. Instead of continuing to do the same thing over and over again, we knew we had to do something different. So we went with a program called RISE. This is not a commercial for RISE, but I do think it has worked well for us, as you'll see. If we go to the next one. So it is a program, but it takes the 4 components of literacy: reading, guided writing, comprehension, and word study. It does not include whole group writing. But it takes those 4 components of primary literacy especially, and it focuses on all of them at the same time. So we chose a group of 16 students. If you'll go to the next one. One more. Sorry, that one was more. So we chose a group of 16 students that we knew could move fast, could rise quickly. Those students were selected very carefully. It also allowed for us to have some ELL collaboration. We added in some ELL services in those as well. And we took 4 highly qualified adults. So our literacy coach, our Read to Achieve, who is reading recovery trained right now, an instructional assistant that could out-teach me any day, and our ELL teacher to bring in some of that ELL background. Each of those teachers work at a rotation. So for an hour, 16 kids, the kids don't rotate, the teachers rotate in order for COVID protocols and things like that, and they're grouped COVID safe. So they rotate through those rotations: a word work, a fluency, a writing, and a comprehension. And each student sees that teacher, and they get to go through those 4 rotations for a session of, it ends up being about 14 minutes each that they get to focus just on that, and each group looks different. I could talk all day about that, but so we started out with this in first grade and second grade. So each classroom, about each grade level, had an hour. We planned our master schedule that way, knowing that that we were going to have this deficit, so we planned our master schedule that way. And then we had one very large classroom where we were able to fit everybody in there. If you'll click the next one, I think it has some pictures. So you can see here, there are 4 rotations there, and the kids stay where they are. They are in text the entire time, working, and then you can see our 4 adults. The 4 adults actually are the ones that rotate through each group. Go to the next one. This is their incentive for reading. This one is actually from where we started last year. But every time they bring back their books that they've read at home, they get a little sticker, and it's, they'll do anything for a sticker. We'll go to the next one. This is our data. Now, some of this, students came to school, some of them didn't come to school. You'll see there, but the blue is where they started in the fall, and red is where first graders finished in January, of just those RISE kids. The ones that didn't make growth didn't come to school. So, but we were very proud of that. The next slide is second grade.
Wow.
The second grade actually did so well that we discontinued that group. We got them back to where they needed to be so they could go back into the classroom and work where they needed to be, and we could pull some small groups for some that didn't make as much growth. So the data shows that it's working. We're very pleased with it. I wish we could do it for every grade level, but it takes a lot of people and a lot of space and a lot of time. But so we've been very proud of the way that it's worked out. I think that's it. That's one of the things that we've been doing on top of wearing masks and social distancing. Any other questions? Anything you have for me?
How is your staff holding up? Is everyone doing as well as they can?
I think so. We have days, and we can tell. We joke that we can measure the stress level by the level of chocolate. We have a chocolate thing out, and when last week, the chocolate was empty. So we refilled the chocolate this week, and it's today there was still chocolate left in the container. So, but they have been so resilient. My admin team has been phenomenal, just like Elaine was talking about her admin team. Mine's been phenomenal. I couldn't have done this without them. And our staff they've been so resilient. They've done whatever they've needed to do. Some are teaching virtually while their kids are in quarantine. Some are teaching. They've done an amazing job. So they're holding up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions?
All
All right,
Thank you so
for
much.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming tonight. I mean it really is the best part of what we get to do is hearing about the individual schools. So thank you both very much.
Just a couple quick comments, and I want to say thanks to Elaine and to Tiffany. We kind of put them up here first because they're our most experienced principals, and so we felt like they would be good ones to start with. Things are different this year, but it feels the same when you're in the schools. And I know that maybe doesn't make sense, but you still hear laughter. You still see kids working. You still see kids enjoying school and adults caring about kids. So it feels the same, but it looks very different. But I think that is a tribute to these two ladies and all of our principals really for what they are doing on a daily basis to help us be successful in what we're trying to accomplish this year. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, for facilitating having them come. That's great for us to have them here. All right, we will move on to our planning session and review the board agenda.
All right, first item, Mr. Martello.
Good evening.
I'm presenting on the monthly treasurer report items. Items include the balance sheet, monthly summary report, and the cash by fund report. Like I normally do, I'll just go into detail and cover some of the highlights in the cash by fund report. For the first item, the general fund, it's a little bit north of 14.2 million for the balance. Remember, the payroll's coming out of that for the most part, the general fund, payroll and just normal expenditures. Special revenue fund, a little bit of a decline there. District and school activity funds, still similar balances on those. Skipping down the building fund, we've had some debt payments to be transferred out for the building fund to pay those bond payments. Construction fund, debt service fund, again, not a lot of movement there. Food service, for the operations for that piece, a little bit north of the 547,000, and daycare and community ed. So just the balances there for February by cash. The CARES piece, so we received, when you include the private school piece, again, north of the $500,000 in CARES money for the first round of CARES. We've pretty much encumbered those dollars in the form of a PO or expended them with the form of an expenditure, an actual check. And then again, the GEARS, we're about halfway through on the GEARS piece for that first round of CARES money, or the first piece of GEARS. Again, similar balance on the one-to-one device for that $16,000 balance. So with that, those are the highlights for the report.
Do we have any inclination of what the allotment will be from the newest stimulus package passed? No.
We don't have a final figure on that yet.
Is the thought that it's going to be allocated the same way, or we don't know that?
No, that I don't know, because I think there were some questions about the last round of allocations. So I don't know if there's going to be any differences on that with some districts or not. I think the ability to expend in terms of the reasons that you can expend those funds, I think it's going to be very similar. And I think the time frame is going to be very similar to the second round. But we just don't know amounts yet.
Remind me again, it was 2 full years?
We have until September of 2023 on the second round of expenditures.
All right, Ms. Springate, any questions?
No, thank you so much.
Ms. Richardson?
No, thank you.
Ms. McHale?
None for me, thank you.
Ms. Glass?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Martello.
All right, we'll go through the consent agenda. First item there is donations, and we have just a few of those. Several of those are either items that have been donated to schools or there have been monetary donations. Nothing really out of the ordinary at all. For fundraisers, we just have a few. Some of our sports teams are doing some fundraisers. I do want to call your attention to the one on the Booster Club, and this was just an oversight. We're asking for a post approval on that one. They've done this one for years, and I think they had planned on doing it in the fall and weren't able to, and so they were certainly very apologetic. We do ask for a post approval on that one. The next item are travel requests, and we have none. The next one is contract with fiscal court, and this is one that we typically do at the beginning of the fiscal year. However, we can do it really at any point in time during the year, and it's just a contract that we have with fiscal court that where they reimburse us for transporting the non-public school students within our county. And so that's something that's a fairly standard, straightforward process. So that's what that is. The next one is to approve. We received our second offer, our KETS offer for FY21, and so we're asking you to approve the escrow of that. As far as the regular agenda, the first item is the personnel matters. That's everything that's occurred since the February board meeting. Item B is to accept notification of payment of bills. Item C is the approval of meeting minutes, and if you recall, there were a few corrections that need to be made on the January minutes, so we have those included again. So January 19th, January 25th, and then all of the meetings that occurred in February on the 2nd, the 22nd, two on February 22nd, and then also February 23rd. The next item is the Safe Schools Grant Project, and we received some grant funds that are going to allow us to do some projects right now on the safety side of things where we can do some cameras, and I know Mr. Martello had submitted what we would like to spend the funds on to KDE so that we could get their approval on the front end to make sure that we were headed down the right path. And have we gotten that back in?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're doing cameras, door intrusion system, some servers for the cameras. So,
If you don't mind, just so that they can hear you on the feed.
sure. Door intrusions, security cameras, and some servers for the data on those security cameras. And there was one more eligible item, but we're restricted by the guidelines on these grant funds. So we've already gotten some pre-approval with KDE before we wanted to bring it to you, and they've already given the go-ahead on everything that we submitted. So we're excited about that. Mr. Gibson's worked hard to research that with both his team and the schools to figure out what needs they had to enable better security environment.
And it was right at $110,000.
That's what I was going to ask.
So we were able to not have to expend those funds, and I know we had already done a lot as far as safety goes, but this was, what else do we need to do? And so we were able to use those funds for those particular projects.
What a great opportunity. Thank you.
So
Can I
that's
make
what that is.
So it was cameras, servers for cameras, and door intrusion. Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am. Off the top of my head, door
Okay.
intrusions. Yes. Were there any best
Okay.
ones?
Three, door access in all the vestibules, but PA systems too.
PA systems, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And there was at 3 schools, wasn't there?
3 schools.
3 intercom systems, yes.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
All right. And so again, we had it on the agenda because we had sent that to KDE. We wanted to make sure that they were good before we brought it for your approval. Item E is the selection of the board attorney. And then item F is to create the charge for the superintendent selection committee. So I don't have anything to say on those two. I know you back up, so I don't know if there was any discussion on that or not.
I don't know that we need to have any on the selection of the board attorney. I think we've had the interviews and we'll be ready to vote as members next week on that. And then on item F, creating the charge for the superintendent selection committee, the next section on our planning agenda includes the superintendent selection survey, and we will hope to have that data back for us to review prior to the meeting on Mondays to help us guide on our description on the charge for that. So that is all I have on those two items. Is there any comment or need for discussion on any of those? All right, then we'll return to our planning agenda. And the first item is the second reading of the updated Code of Ethics. And again, I believe we said last time, Mr. Chenoweth, that we can just read the part that we are amending or adding. Is that correct?
It is.
And then is the second reading sufficient, or do we need a vote as well?
You need to vote.
All right. And we added item number 9, correct?
Yes.
All right, and item number 9 on the updated Code of Ethics, which is policy 01.53, says, be responsible and respectful in their use of electronic communications and social media by protecting confidential information received in their role as a board member, avoiding group texts or email chains which might violate public meeting laws, complying with record retention rules where applicable, avoiding communications and posts which negatively impact the reputation of the district or which interfere with or disrupt the education mission of the district, and by clearly indicating the content is the member's personal view and is not on behalf of the district or board collectively. And I believe that the recommendation from Mr. Chenoweth was neither pro or con in adopting this amendment. So we will vote on that now if there's a motion to adopt this change.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate and a second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Nay.
Thank you. The motion passes 4-1. All right, the next item is superintendent selection survey. And each of us have the examples that Mr. Martin has sent to us on the ways that other districts have done this. So I will open up the floor to you, Mr. Martin, if you want to kind of take us through this. And welcome to the meeting.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Bradley. I just sent a couple of samples that other districts have used to gauge public opinion for the superintendent search in order for the board to establish criteria that they can relay to the search committee next week about the qualities of the superintendents that this board would like for them to concentrate on. And this is just one bit of information, input that the community can offer for the board to consider as part of their criteria that they'll be mentioning to the search committee. So most surveys are successful if you keep them fairly brief, in my opinion, to about 10 questions or less. A quick turnaround is important, so I would use the format that I provided to you, where you possibly would have your survey company, which if you're using Google Forms or SurveyMonkey or whatever that you would use, that it'd be easy to tally those results and provide to each member of the board in a very efficient and expedient manner. So the questions that each of these surveys ask that I provided to the board are fairly standard. It gives the board, it would give the board some basic information about things that, topics such as experience, topics such as important programs that the public would like to see in the schools at Woodford County. It gives some basic information that is very important, I think, that the board can use to determine that criteria that hopefully we'll be able to do about a week from tonight.
Okay. We can go around and see if there was one or in either set that the board members preferred on this, or any specific questions that they thought needed to be added or really thought needed to be included. Ms. Springate?
I have no questions.
And did you have a preference on either?
I do not.
All right. Ms. Richardson?
No, ma'am, I have no questions or preference.
All right. Ms. McHale?
No questions. My preference is the second one, the Boone County one. The only, I guess, concern I have is that it might be a little complicated, but I like the data and the questions that are in it. So I guess maybe depending on how we administer the survey, to take that into consideration.
Okay. Was there a certain one that you were, was it number 5?
Well,
that you
number
were
5.
Concerned about? Me
number
too.
5,
Yeah.
and then number 7 is also one of those kind of rankings, although it's a little less complicated than the other one. But number 5 in particular, I thought maybe if we could simplify that somehow.
Okay. Ms. Glass?
I agree. I like the second one the best. And I like the information that number 5 could give us, but I agree with Ms. McHale that it could be a little complicated. Maybe if we can somehow adjust 5 and 7 to be similar in the way they're laid out. Looks like they're kind of asking, both of them are asking to rank things, but they're kind of laid out differently. So maybe if we could find a consistent way to lay them out, lay the questions out. Looks like they're both rating. But I definitely like this survey the best.
I agree. I also liked that one more. It would seem that question number 7, in ranking those in order of priority, is probably easier than the other.
In the table.
Mr. Gibson, how will these translate to a Google form best?
Ms. Cooper has already taken the second one in particular and created it as a Google form. Any revisions that you all have, we can certainly do pretty quickly, since she has that up, as long as you give us specifics on what you want.
So does the table go
Yes.
into Google Forms okay?
Yes, she was able to get that in. Yeah.
It's not a table, it is a created table with checkboxes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like this.
I can show them right here.
Can you show them? Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Richardson, she said that they have already created an example for the second, the Boone County example, and that they were able to put question number 5 in that form. Mr. Gibson's going to show it on the screen how it would look. I'm not sure how much of that you can hear.
Superintendent search survey. 2021 in front of it though.
That's what I'm looking for. search for it. 20. I'll pull it up on email.
Can we just reshare it with you all?
Yeah, that would be good too. There it is.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me present this on the screen.
You gonna show it in their view, like what it would look like to take it?
Share. There we go. Should be popping up. So you can see there's the first couple of items. And moving it on up. And like I said, we can edit these pretty easily.
Sure.
And there's these, and these are all pretty self-explanatory, the first several, but what you were looking at is like that one.
Yeah.
And it is, when you view it online of what the person on the other end would view, see how it's cut off the left margin item there? It actually is written out in full online. It's just we're seeing the edit screen instead of the
And then how would that information come back on that? Like, would it say the number of people that ranked it as critical?
Yes, we would get a spreadsheet with the data, and then we might have to, because of this chart, we might have to manipulate it a little bit just to put it in a format that makes sense.
Okay.
But yes, we would get the data that you're looking for.
All right.
Could we go back to the first question? Angel, thank you for doing this. You're so on top of things. I just had a question for Grant about that first question. Grant, is the first question something, is that okay to ask? Can you hear me?
You're on mute, Grant.
There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
I have two screens up, but the camera is on the one that's blocking part of the other screen, so you can see the mute.
Technology, you gotta love it.
Yeah, it's making everybody's life simple, right? For an executive officer like the position of superintendent, you can have a residency requirement. Inquiring about residency is permissible.
Okay.
You would be discouraged from asking things like that on teacher or principal or lower level central office employees, because the courts have said a residency requirement is not a legitimate consideration for those other types of positions. So good question, but for a chief executive position, it's fine to ask and to require.
So I guess I was reading that question to mean, do I live in Woodford
Correct.
County if I'm taking the survey?
For the
Yes,
respondents.
Yeah.
Actually, the
Okay.
superintendent residence question
Is in
is
there.
later on.
Yeah.
But this one
Right.
is asking the person completing the survey.
Okay, yeah. You know, yes, you can ask that too. How is this being distributed? Just to your families that are already in the system, or is it a link going to be open to the community as a whole?
Both.
Both, and the stakeholders.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's fair to, as a data point, to sort who is telling you what their concerns are. So you're not gathering information on individual respondents. So just finding out whether a respondent has said that they live in Woodford County is fine. Are any of the questions being set up where you must answer, or can you leave them blank?
And we can make any question you all desire required. We can make any not required. So if you want to, give people the choice of whether to answer, that's up to you.
I would think I'd be fine with anyone not answering any question they didn't want to. I don't know what you guys think.
So make them all not required?
Yeah. Are there any thoughts on that?
I would agree with that for this type of survey. On that one, because the data is it's still helpful to you all, because you want to be somewhat, you all as elected officials want to be responsive to your constituents. That one, I think you could potentially make it mandatory, but have a third option of prefer not to answer, so that at least the people that, you know, they have to affirmatively select that instead of just skip over that part of the screen.
Sure. All right, are there any other questions?
Is that your all's desire?
Is that what we want to do?
Yeah, that would be what I would say. Just make them optional.
Alright, when you give suggestions, you would tell me directly that's what you want to be done, that way I know it's coming from you guys,
Yeah.
not as a suggestion.
Sure.
So make it as a third option, prefer not to answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And all not required?
Correct.
All questions, okay.
And Mr. Martin, maybe you can tell us, I was kind of, and this is maybe a bit naive on my part, I was surprised that both surveys asked, should the new superintendent be required to live in the county within 12 months of hiring? Is that something that boards typically focus on?
At this point, you know, in a survey question, I don't know how important that will be. I think that is a question that the board probably needs to discuss between now and the end of this process. Where I live in northern Kentucky, it is very common for superintendents not to live in the district where they are employed. There's 17 school districts in northern Kentucky. I think 5 superintendents live in Boone County alone. So it's not an issue. Now, the further you get away from urban areas, the more important that is. I have found out with boards of education that the CEO of that school district is expected to live within the boundaries of that school district. So if you want to gather that information from your public, that is certainly allowable. At some point, then the board is going to try to hire the best person for the job, probably regardless, and use that as one of the questions that they will ask candidates during the later stages of the process, possibly. But yeah, you could ask it as public input at this point. Okay. Because in some districts, it's very, very important that the superintendent live in the school district. Like I said, in other districts, it's not really a big issue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gibson, I'm sorry.
Can I piggyback on that for just a second?
Of course.
If that is a firm requirement that the board intends to impose board members, or if you believe that that's going to be significant for your community, it is better to make sure that's clear on the front end for the screening committee and for you all as you do interviews, because I've seen the hiring process fall apart when the residency piece is discussed at the very end instead of being real clear on the front end.
Okay.
And Ms. Bradley, we can do that if the board wants that as a question that the screening committee will pose to the people that they are going to be interviewing. In fact, that is a regular occurrence at most of our screening committee meetings, that of those districts that's important, that the screening committee will ask that up front. Are they willing to relocate if they are not now located in Woodford County?
Okay. Well, I guess we'll keep that question on the survey then, and we can, as a board, gauge the public's reaction to that and the importance of that to Woodford County's residents, and evaluate that when we create the charge next week. Mr. Gibson and Ms. Cooper, when could you distribute the survey?
And Ms. Bradley, let me just add that I have conducted searches in about 25 districts now, and probably 98% to 99% of the candidates respond that they will relocate to the district where they're employed.
Okay, thank you.
The speed basically is at your discretion, because when you all give us what the final proof is, we can get it out pretty quick. That's the easy part. It's just, we may need somebody to come sit down with us to proof it at the very end, to say, this is exactly what you want, versus more generic right now.
Okay.
So that's the only thing, but it can go out even tomorrow afternoon, as long as somebody approves what we're sending out.
Okay, and then if we closed it on Saturday night, I'm trying to leave it open as long as possible to get the most public participation, but then not have you guys in an undue crunch for the data. What do you recommend?
That would be tough there.
I will be back at work on Monday morning at 7 o'clock approximately.
Yeah.
I will not work on it over the weekend if
No,
I don't
no.
have to, so you might as well leave it open through Sunday night,
Okay,
don't you think?
Yeah.
okay.
Are we
What she
only-
said is that she would be back to look at the responses Monday morning at 7, so there was not really any advantage to not leaving it open through the whole weekend. And then we can review that.
Ms. Bradley, just a quick question on that.
Sure.
Are we only offering this online as a survey? Do we have any plans to send paper copies home, or a way to get to it? Do we need to consider, I guess, a non-electronic version?
I think a non-electronic version will slow the data result
Absolutely.
a lot. But I do, Mr. Gibson, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, offering a paper option is good for the general public, no doubt about that. We had very few take advantage of that with our election recently, if any. But this may be different. They may want to do this one. The only negative with it is it would take time to go through the data, because you're going to be flipping through a lot, and you're going to have to eventually transpose it over into digital.
If you get 50 or 100 people to do it, we still have to have the time to input that data
Sure.
if you want.
Yeah.
Ms. McHale, you couldn't see Ms. Cooper behind you. She said that on the most recent election, there were 0 paper ballots cast.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I agree with Mr. Gibson that we always try to do paper if we can. I'm worried about the turnaround time.
Right.
We have less than a week to get it in.
Is there any way that we could make a spot available at one of the schools that somebody could come in and take the survey if they needed to?
or if we did it at central office in the vestibule and drop it in a box, or
You're talking about a digital means.
Yes.
All the libraries typically have an extra machine
Okay.
or two, but
So that's
it's
a great
just,
okay.
the question becomes whether they're gonna be allowed into the building
Yeah.
to do it, so that's gonna be the issue.
Yeah.
Are you worried about people not having access to a phone or a computer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I have no basis for that. I'm just asking.
No, it's a good
just
question
make
to
sure
ask.
that we're getting it out to everybody.
The success we've had is, there are so many phones out there. By and large, most of our families at least have a phone
Okay.
that can do the survey,
Okay.
if they want to do the survey.
I think also it might be a good thing to reach out like we did for the forum that we had to our community partners as well. Maybe get the mayor, the Chamber of Commerce's again, the libraries, whoever else to share the link so we can get some input from our community members as well.
okay. We can certainly do that. I assume the link will be on the website and so easily shared. The paper copy, I think is harder.
I agree.
And to that end, Angel, did we get any written submissions for the forum when we had that avenue open?
No, they were both emailed.
They were emailed.
Okay.
I think we may be at the mercy of electronics with this one, if that is okay with all the board members.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's just kind of a reality. I wish that we could do, paper ballots home, because I think that's a good thing to do, and paper ballots, out with the community, but it does kind of sound like we're a little bit,
I would add for our community, with online registration this year, is the first year we ever did it, we had over 90% of our families do online registration, which blew away most people across the state because they didn't get anywhere near that high. So our families, as a general rule, are pretty used to doing this.
That's good information. Thank you.
Great. All right. Then if everyone's in agreement, we will publish this tomorrow at some point and leave it open until, do you want to do Monday at 6 a.m. or do you need a definite cutoff? What works best for you?
I said Sunday night, whatever time of Sunday night you want to give it, even if it's midnight,
Okay.
That way it's just clear that Sunday night is the cutoff.
Okay, we can do that Sunday night at midnight. And then we will review that next week as a board and come up with the charge for the selection committee. Are there any further comments on this from anyone or from Mr. Martin?
The only change I heard was to add to number 1, prefer not to answer. Is that correct?
Yes. Angel asked that the only change that we have requested is giving the people the ability not to answer on each question, and that is the only change that we made.
And adding the third one, prefer not to answer on the very first one.
That's why.
This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right. If we're all good with that, we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Appreciate your coming tonight and talking us through that.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
Have a good evening.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is attorney fees, and this was added by Ms. Richardson. So, Ms. Richardson, I'll let you introduce this.
I just wanted to take a minute for the board to be able to discuss the recent attorney fees that we had. I didn't know, do we need to possibly make a motion to waive attorney-client privilege for some information that we received from our attorney?
Yeah, I think that we probably want to discuss waiving privilege on the most recent communication from Mr. Chenoweth on March 13th. If there's a motion to waive attorney-client privilege on the communication dated March 13th from Mr. Chenoweth to the board.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion by Ms. Richardson and a second by Ms. Glass to waive attorney-client privilege on a letter dated March 13th from Mr. Chenoweth to the board.
I do have one question before we vote. Mr. Chenoweth, do we need to have a motion and waive that privilege, or is that something we can discuss openly without a motion?
The attorney-client privilege is an interesting thing. It belongs to you all and not me. Arguably, there's parts of that letter that are not really privileged, but as an attorney, I always want to say, I'd love to say everything I wrote to you was 100% privileged, but I know that that's not what the law is. Generally speaking, anytime an attorney is saying what the law is as applied to a real or hypothetical set of facts that is subject to being claimed as attorney-client privilege, so entertaining a motion to waive any privilege that applies at least takes away from anybody the ability to accuse one of you all from accidentally saying more than you should have.
So it sounds like that's the safe thing to do.
it is just on the safe side. The privilege is yours, not mine. When I assert it, it's 100% on your behalf. So I don't have an opinion on it. If you all want to openly discuss the correspondence, it's yours to decide to do that, not mine.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of waiving attorney-client privilege on the March 13th email from Mr. Chenoweth, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, so we will go around just like always and allow each member a chance to speak on this. Ms. Springate?
Yes. I guess I would just like to start out saying I spoke with a friend today and about this item, and what her advice was to look at the big picture. And so I guess in looking at the big picture, my question or my concern is that we have a communication problem, and I believe that problem has spilled over into a costly attorney bill problem. So first I would say that I think it's healthy and productive as a public entity for us to ask the question, how are we using our board attorney, and exactly who is receiving information and advice from that attorney. I think that we can do that in a non-confrontational conversation that really gets to the root of the matter, that this is a communication issue. The issue that I have is that the board attorneys that we interviewed and the board attorney that we currently have all clearly indicate that their communication with the board, their client is the board. And so my issue is that I want the communication from the attorneys to come to the full board. So that's really at the heart of the issue for me. I think that it's not just a financial issue. I did introduce a protocol back in January of last year asking that all communication go through the chair and that the chair or the board attorney share that communication with the full board. I did that because there were some issues, but again, I don't want to get into the weeds. I think it's not just about financial oversight, but it's also about getting the advice and the information of the attorney for the full board, which is 5 members, before we make major decisions, before we authorize and approve agenda items, before we receive the bills months and months later. I think that, just to be perfectly candid, that trust is an issue. It has been broken based on some of the records that I did receive and review, and I think that we can rebuild that. All I'm asking for is that the board attorney, who is the attorney for the 5 board members, that communications with the board attorney be shared with all 5 board members, and that be done in a timely manner. I think that that would avoid the skyrocketing bills that we have. There's really no need for the board attorney to communicate with one board member and then, not share that information with the full board. We've already paid for that advice. We've paid for those legal issues, and they clearly are for the full board. They're not for one individual member. The attorney doesn't represent one person, and so it makes no sense to go back to the attorney, member after member, asking for the advice, member after member asking for the same legal counsel that has been given. So again, all I'm asking is that we look at the big picture and realize that the communication issue has just overtaken and caused some extensive attorney bills. I think we have to look at how we use the board attorney, and we have to look at that data to see if it makes sense what we've been doing, and we have to also realize that the board attorney is the attorney for the full board, and all I'm asking is to be included in communication between board members and the board attorney, that we're all included actually, so that that information is shared with everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes, I have a statement that I'd like to make, and I promise not to make this a habit, but I've written something up, and I was just going to say, if at any point that my feed breaks up between myself and you guys, if you would please, Madam Chair, let me know so that I can start over, because I want to make sure that everyone is clear on what my statement is.
Okay.
Okay, in the past 2.5 years that I've been on the board, Ms. Springate has consistently attacked the character of most every other member on the board. We have been attacked over and over, meeting after meeting. At the first training conference that we went to after I joined the board, she refused to even sit with me at the table. When I sat down with her and other board members, she actually picked up her things and left and moved to a table away from us. How is this you promoting boards working together? I have overlooked her attacks on my character, her waving around pictures of posts that I've made on my private social media that have actually even included my children. I'm done. One of the most consistent complaints that Ms. Springate makes is that the board isn't physically responsible or transparent. I don't believe Ms. Springate has ever notified me that she has contacted the attorney. But I can say from seeing the bills, which we mentioned earlier in this meeting, that she definitely has. Where is her transparency? We have received attorney's fees this month that show that the cost of having Sherry Springate as a board member is high. Ms. Springate's need to be right and to try to expose something that she suspects other board members might be doing has cost Woodford County taxpayers over $8,000. That's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense, actually. This is all for nothing. The people in this county don't work hard to pay their taxes to have Ms. Springate make unfounded allegations that cost money to defend. Thousands of dollars have been wasted. With zero transparency and no benefit to a single student in this district. The attorney bills alone are more than $8,000. That doesn't include a single minute of the time that Woodford County employees spent on these ridiculous requests. Thousands of pages of open records requests printed so that Ms. Springate can make allegations against board members who aren't even on the board anymore. How is this physically responsible? How is this helping any student in our school? It isn't. Not one student has been helped by that. On September 23rd, 2019, Ms. Springate said that the school board shouldn't pay an invoice from the Versailles Police Department for $216.64. In fact, she voted against paying our local police department for services they provided. She voted this way because she said that I acted outside of my role as a board member by requesting security for both ourselves and the people that attended our meeting. I'm saying tonight that I believe our attorneys should be paid for their services that they have provided, but I absolutely think that Ms. Springate should pay those bills. I will say it again, not one single student benefited from her allegations of open meeting violations. Not one student benefited from her open records requests. These are petty things that absolutely don't matter to our children. We could have found far better ways to spend thousands of dollars than on Ms. Springate's ridiculous and inaccurate claims. We could have bought 3,018 school lunches for our elementary students. We could have paid a new bus driver 494 hours. I think most taxpayers would prefer we spend our money on either of these things. I'm going to close my comments with this. All of us on this board have made mistakes and will continue to as we continue our time here. We are human and at times all of us fall off course. But when your actions cost your taxpayers thousands of dollars, it's time to reevaluate your actions. From this point forward, I would hope that this new board can focus on what is at the best interest of our taxpayers as well as our students and staff.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Ms. McHale?
I don't have anything to say on this topic.
Okay. Ms. Glass?
I just want to add, it's really disheartening that as being a new member, I feel like we have not really been given the chance. I feel like I feel like personally that we are constantly being lumped into issues that previous boards had. I don't think that does anything good for our community, for our students, for our constituents. And I think it's time that we do a reset. I think that continuing to dig deep into open records requests and open meetings and bringing up things that people did that are not here to defend themselves, it's very uncomfortable as a new member to sit here and go through that. So I think we need to work together as a board and figure out whatever way we want to do to distribute communication, whether it be from our attorneys. I mean, most other boards I have sat on, I mean, there's chairs for a reason. If the chair is, you know, the way that we funnel our information and it trickles down to the board, I mean, that seems like the best way to do it for me. I just hope that we can move forward from this, because it's doesn't, like Ms. Richardson said, we're not doing anything for our students, we're not doing anything for our constituents. I think we owe it to both of those groups to act better and to move on from these issues.
Thank you. I would say that in acknowledgement of some of those concerns, we do want to be responsible with the funds. And one of the concerns that's been expressed is that the same information is being relayed multiple times to multiple members at additional cost. And one of the things that is included in Mr. Chenoweth's email is that has not happened. It says, while I am due, bear with me. I know that one of the concerns has been to avoid the accumulation of legal fees because of the same question being asked multiple times by separate board members. While I acknowledge this possibility, I cannot recall this occurring on any regular basis. What more frequently occurs, as I believe you've seen the fruits of during meetings, is that a member will ask me a question in the days leading up to a board meeting, essentially as a heads up that they intend to raise the issue during a meeting, and my advice is rendered to the entire board during the meeting. This informal protocol allows me to do research as needed before the meeting, rather than to have to defer an answer until after a meeting, and results in a more efficient use of my time. So I think that that's important for the public to know, that is not something that's happening on any regular basis. The other thing is the setting of agenda items. The agenda, to my knowledge, has always been created between the superintendent and the chairperson. Our policy expressly states that the agenda is to be prepared by the superintendent and approved by the chair. I'm not sure how an agenda by committee would work without incurring open meetings violations. I think that is something that has always been the case, as is reflected in our procedures and policies. And I do think that the costs that have been incurred, or we have incurred, are extreme and they are unfortunate. And I do think there are some other concerns. I think that in some of the open records that were turned over in Ms. Springgate's request, there were records turned over that were attorney-client privileged to the other 4 members of the board, and that privilege was not extended to Ms. Springate because she was the complainant. I think putting our employees in a position for those kind of things to happen is unfair, and I hope that we can move forward in a more productive manner and a better use of our time, as well as the board attorneys and all of our employees.
I would just like to have time to comment about Ms. Richardson's comments, and also just to say, I don't think there's any debate that the costs that were incurred for my asking the attorney to give me a copy of our legal records, that's what Ms. Richardson is talking about. I don't know that it was $8,000. I think that's something we need to fact check. I will say it was significant, and it was entirely avoidable. The way that the communication should have and could have been shared would have been through the chair. That costs $0. The open records request costs $0. What I want to do is make sure that I'm being fiscally responsible, to make sure that when we pay bills for attorney advice, that's a good use of our funds. I will say I agree with Ms. Richardson that the attorney bills need to be discussed. I want to take this opportunity to discuss a few facts pertaining to our bills. The first issue is that the attorney communications were not shared with the full board. That is the only reason that I asked for those communications. I asked for those from the chair first. That would have cost $0. These were communications that were sent to the chair. She had these communications. I didn't receive them, unfortunately. My next step was to ask the attorneys. And again, I said in the protocol that I asked to be done that was going to incur extra costs. The entire bill that was sent for Mr. Salisbury and Mr. Chenoweth for me to get those records was 100% avoidable. All we have to do is share the attorney communications. So what I want to say is that after receiving Attorney Salisbury's bill, I did reach out to district office to get a copy of our contract agreement. I was surprised to learn that the contract had not even been shared with our district office. How are we to know the terms of our agreement if none of us even have the contract? Almost everyone in this room, staff included, can attest to the fact that I have repeatedly asked to be included in communications with our architect, bonding agent, and attorney. In December of 2019, I inquired about the board's nearly $12,000 of fees incurred within a 3-month period as a result of private conversations with Attorney Salisbury. The following month, in January of 2020, I did make a motion for an attorney protocol asking that the attorneys provide a brief summary of contact with board members. I asked them and stand by tonight that this is not a prudent use of tax dollars. The attorney should not have to provide the same legal counsel to me a second time or to any board member asking for that. That should be done the first time. Also, I would just say that when we interviewed the 5 candidates for the position of board attorney, without exception, every single one said that the client is the board, not individual members. As one client stated, there are no secrets. Simply put, all members of the board have a legal right to be informed of conversations with the agents of our board. We're all entitled to that information. The bills, that was caused because the board chair chose not to share the information that we're entitled to. And so I had to request it a second time.
Ms. Springate.
I'm sorry, I'm not finished. Is it okay if I just finish, please? Ms. Richardson was able to finish, and I would like to do the same.
You went before Ms. Richardson.
Correct, and I want to address her accusations and the attacks.
I'm
please.
just going to
Chair,
say,
Madam
hold
Chair,
on just
I
a
didn't
moment.
have the
I'm going
opportunity
to speak.
address Ms. Springgate's accusations when
No,
she
just a
blasted
second,
me
please.
in an open meeting.
Just a second.
So if Ms. Springgate's going to
Ms.
finish,
Richardson.
then I would like to share Mr. Chenoweth's email that he sent to us after Ms. Springate is finished.
Okay, thank you. I understand that you want to finish, but I don't think this board is moved forward in any way by continuing to talk about actions that occurred under a completely different board. I think we need to move forward.
With all due respect, I don't know that you can move forward if you don't acknowledge mistakes and then correct those mistakes.
The
So
chair
I do
that
want to
you're
talk
speaking-
about the new bill that just came in. That's for this board.
It is not.
We have to
part of
approve
it
that
is.
bill, so that's something we have to do. So there's a huge discrepancy between the two bills. Attorney Chenoweth charged $990 and Attorney Salisbury charged $3,703. That's a significant difference to copy records. Also, I noticed that Attorney Salisbury emailed his bill directly to Ms. Bradley with a subject line that read, "Your statement from Sturgill, Turner, Parker, and Maloney is attached." Since when do attorneys send emails to individual board members of a bill? Additionally, it's worth noting that Attorney Salisbury, without exception, had always billed us monthly. This means that the January bill would normally be sent in February, but this one did not arrive until March. I'm not sure why there was a delay. It's an unusual circumstance, and it leads me to wonder if you requested the bill from Attorney Salisbury. Our most recent bill from Attorney Chenoweth contained 12 conversations between Ms. Bradley and Attorney Chenoweth, 7 of which occurred prior to our first board meeting. To put this in perspective, the entire district staff only had 15 contacts during the same time period. Last week, I sent Ms. Bradley an email asking if she would please send the board a brief summary of our 12 phone conversations with Attorney Chenoweth. Basically, the response stated that the protocol was voted down last year, therefore she didn't have to share this information. From the bills, I can see Ms. Bradley talked with Attorney Chenoweth about the following topics. Our first board agenda, and that was before you were named chief, a possible open meetings violation, the superintendent contract, and keep in mind this was before Mr. Hawkins' resignation, and also a possible breach of attorney-client privilege. The legal advice on these important topics should have been shared with the full board. Board member communication is something that I had asked to be added to the agenda in the hopes that that would be disclosed so that before we have votes and before we approve bills, we would all have the information. I would also like to point out that Angel Cooper and the superintendent are both extremely capable in their roles. For years, the two successfully provided guidance on agendas and other board matters. Many of our communication issues would be eliminated if we would simply allow the people we've hired to do the job they're hired to do. Calling our attorneys over every little thing is not necessary, it's not prudent, and it's not a good use of tax dollars. Although I think it's shameful that our attorneys have charged us to copy records for services they previously rendered, I wholeheartedly believe that getting the records was the right thing to do. I'm certain our community would be appalled, just as I am, as to how the board has used taxpayer dollars over the last couple of years on attorney fees. Over $15,000 was spent to deal with superintendent matters, yet the attorney never met with the board a single time. The costs were incurred primarily by 3 members who had private conversations with the attorney. Effective school boards do not behave in this manner. Our kids, our staff, and our community deserve better. And in closing, I would just say that we need to be transparent. We need to share information so that I don't have to go back, or another board member doesn't have to go back and ask the attorney to please repeat the advice you gave, because it's clear there's a charge for that.
Madam Chair, can I speak, please?
Yes.
I'd like to read Mr. Chenoweth's response to the board members that we waived the client attorney privileges on earlier. I'd like to read this because I think that it is agreeable between myself and at least 2 of the other board members that we trust that you as the chair contacting Attorney Chenoweth about board meeting matters is something that we don't really have to know about every single thing. As a new chair, you definitely have to contact him and ask to make sure that agenda items are put on the board, are on the agenda correctly. I trust that you're doing that, and everything that we've discussed or that you have discussed with him, as far as I know, has been mentioned in an open meeting. Can I share his email, please?
Yes.
Okay. So this email was sent to us late Friday evening, and it is a response to Ms. Springate. She emailed Mr. Chenoweth with questions about a conversation between you and her. And his email says, Ms. Springate, I apologize it has taken me until so late in the day on Friday to get back to your email from Wednesday morning. Since I'm emailing all of the members, I have not included the pair of emails which preceded this response for the exact concern we have discussed during board meetings. It is simply too easy for a chain of emails among board members to morph into a serial meeting or a walking quorum, just by virtue of multiple members chiming in, and I never want to be responsible for a client accidentally violating the Open Meetings Act. To that end, I want to strongly discourage any of you from hitting reply all. In particular, response to your email to Ms. Bradley, there has not been significant correspondence from my office to her which you have not already received. In early February, after I sent the proposed revised code of ethics to you for your reaction, since it originated in your agenda item, I emailed the same document to Ms. Bradley and Mr. Hawkins so that it could be added to the agenda. And in the last week or so, I have exchanged emails with Ms. Bradley, Ms. Cooper, and Mr. Martin in an effort to assist them with issues relating to Open Meetings Act compliance for screening committee and to address the minority parent election. The essence of those communications is either evident in the meeting notices agenda produced by Mr. Martin and or Ms. Cooper, or has been shared with the full board via communication from my office or Ms. Bradley. My communication with Ms. Bradley in January included before the first meeting of the newly constituted board were in her role as acting chair of the board and as appointed chair of the high school leadership committee. When I advised a proceeding officer relating to Open Meetings Act issues concerning meeting notices, agenda items, etc. I suspect it would be atypical for those communications to be repeated or summarized for the rest of the board. The presiding officer function under the Open Meetings Act is the chair's responsibility alone. Under your policy 01.411, the vice chair is to perform the duties of the chairperson in his or her absence, and Ms. Bradley initially communicated with me in January to confirm that this was the correct interpretation of the policy once Ms. Edlin's term of office ended, and there was a significant expanse of time before a new chair was to be elected. She then sought further advice as presiding officer to ensure she kept both the board and the committee in compliance with the Open Meetings Act in her anticipated first outings in that role. When I render advice on meeting notices and agendas or related Open Meeting Act issues, the rest of the board sees the results of my advice in the content of the documents or the manner in which the meeting is conducted. If my advice was sought but not followed, I would be ethically obligated to inform the rest of the board that I had rendered advice to the chair or the secretary, that my advice had been ignored, and that the board has been exposed to some manner of liability because of that fact. I know that one of your concerns has been to avoid the accumulation of legal fees because of the same question being asked multiple times by separate board members. While I acknowledge this possibility, I cannot recall this occurring on a regular basis. What more frequently occurs, as I believe you have seen in the fruits during meetings, is that a member will ask me a question in the days leading up to a board meeting, essentially as a heads up that they intend to raise the issue during the meeting, and my advice is rendered to the entire board during the meeting. This informal protocol allows me to research as needed before the meeting rather than to have to defer an answer until after a meeting, and result in a more efficient use of my time. While I do intend and expect that any significant advice from me as a legal counsel rendered to the chair for the benefit of a board would be shared with other members, I also respect that a board chairperson and board secretary retain a significant level of discretion to determine whether a particular piece of advice is unique to a specific issue being addressed in that moment in their performance of those roles, such that there would be no added benefit to a board as a whole for the advice to be repeated to the rest of the members. By the time the advice was summarized and shared, the moment during which the advice was needed will have passed. The situation will have been addressed, and the communication to the rest of a board would be varying versions of it was handled that way because the lawyer recommended that it be handled that way. I don't really perceive that the rest of the board would benefit from repeatedly receiving messages. I appreciate your frustration, and I don't believe your request in general is unreasonable. However, it remains my advice that any formal protocol in which creates an unbending expectation that a chair must repeat the entire board every communication with legal counsel would ultimately be an inefficient use of the chair's time, would unnecessarily clutter the inboxes of other members, and would increase the risk and an inadvertent breach of privilege without a corresponding benefit to the collective board, which would outweigh those concerns. Because you have 2 new members and a new chair since the communication protocol was last discussed, I don't think the topic is appropriate for further discussion during future board meetings. The open discussion by each of you as to your expectations of the chair, of the superintendent and secretary, and of each other, and of legal counsel will work towards consensus even in the absence of adopting formal or rigid rules. If I am fortunate enough to be selected to continue a relationship with the board, I will remain mindful of the concern and continue to take advantage of opportunities such as your email this week to respond to the entire board so that my own actions don't unnecessarily create future friction or mistrust. And that's from Grant Chenoweth, the board attorney. I think that this email pretty much explains everything and addresses every issue that Ms. Springate just came up with. And it pretty fairly and plainly states that as the acting chair board, you don't have to, and you're not expected to, share every single conversation that you have with our board attorney. And I think it's unfair and unfortunate that we have one member that keeps bringing this issue up when every other member trusts and respects your ability to lead this board. It is time for us to move on from that, and it's time for us to stop demanding that you tell us every single thing that you speak with our attorney. And at this point, it has cost the board over $8,000 for Ms. Springate to repeatedly attack this issue and bring it up over and over and over. We have to move forward from this. We have to have trust in our board, and it's time for that to happen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chenoweth, is that assessment accurate? Again, I don't think that I cost the board $8,000, Allison. That's factually inaccurate, number one. And number two, the only reason that we received a bill for me to request the communication with the attorney, the board attorney's communication with the board, the only reason there was a charge for that was because it wasn't provided all along. And I had to ask for it again,
Ms.
which is
Springate,
asking for it multiple times. Yeah, I don't know that we have resolution, Ms. Bradley. I feel like we need to.
Other members are going to be given an opportunity to speak now.
That's fine.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Thank you.
I think what we have here is, I think there are unclear expectations, and to steal a line from Ms. Kaiser, I think we have to try to address needs before we can address other things. I think it would be wise for this board to get together, work session, whatever the case may be, to truly determine how information is going to be shared, what types of information needs to be shared, so that we're all in agreement on how we can best move forward. Because there are times that information should be passed along. And what are those situations? And I think until we really get at the root cause, we're not going to solve this issue.
I think that's.
And so that my suggestion would be, and I would suggest that you do it once a new attorney is selected, so that we're all on the same page in terms of how we can really go about this and address it in the best way possible. And again, I'm not taking sides one way or the other, but I do think we have to have a conversation among the group to make those determinations.
I appreciate that. Ms. McHale?
Yeah, I guess earlier, I have no direct comment on the attorney fees in particular that we're discussing right now, but I do feel the same way, Mr. Hawkins, that you feel, and Ms. Glass, the way that you feel. Back when Ms. Glass and I were first elected and we went to district offices for a day and a half meeting with all of the district personnel, one of the things that we talked about was the need for a reset and a need for a start over and a start fresh. And I appreciate Ms. Richardson's comments talking about keeping it about the kids. And I don't believe that most of this conversation has been about the kids or anything really to do with anybody employed by the district or who attends school in the district. And one former teacher from Huntertown actually gave me a good piece of advice once I was elected, and she said, keep it about the kids and you will never go wrong. And I think that we have really, that the board has been detoured into some personal issues, and I think that we need to get these things on track. We have major, major issues that we have to deal with. And I think until we can speak to one another clearly and coherently and respectfully, none of that is going to get done. So whatever it is we have to do, I'm on board to do that. I think everybody here is probably on board to do that. We just really, we need to make that happen. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Glass?
I don't have anything else further to add, thank you.
Okay, I think we have pretty fairly exhausted this topic and need to move on in the interest of everyone's time. The next item is the COVID update, Mr. Hawkins.
Yeah, it's all good. We continue to be yellow as a county. I looked at the data earlier, and we are at 8 today, so that's probably the lowest we've been in probably since September or October. But the 5-day a week has gone extremely well. I could not be more proud of how our folks have responded, and I think people are excited. I think they were pretty tired at the end of that first week, but it's just good to have everybody back on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Can we add an agenda item for next week with a legislative update from you?
I'll do my best.
Thank you. The COVID funding is what made me think about that. That is wonderful news. I'm excited that all of our students are back and that our teachers are having the opportunity to have them in their classroom 5 days a week. Does any other member have any comments or questions on that item? Ms. Springate?
No, I'm just excited that we're getting back finally, knock on wood, to normal. And I'm so happy for our students and families and staff. That's wonderful, wonderful news.
Ms. Richardson? You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay, so no, I just wanted to touch back on our updates from Huntertown and Simmons. I really love the idea of the daily check-ins with the emojis on how the kids are feeling, the counseling sessions and the lunch bunch. I thought that was a great idea to kind of get the kids together. And then Simmons, I love seeing the kids playing their guitars, and I know from experience here at home that they don't sound great at that age, but there are certain kids who will take a hold of that, as my son has, and he's a junior in high school now, and he's actually playing full songs, and we're enjoying it. So music and our fine arts are so important to our community and to our district, our kids, and I think that they flourish in those. It's so fun for them. So that was the highlight of the night. I loved hearing those updates.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Ms. McHale?
No, for sure, I agree. I love seeing the pictures and hearing the stories. Also, just dropping my kids off at school in the mornings over the last few weeks with the weather the way that it's been. Thank you to all the staff that's been outside, standing in that weather, taking temperature. At the middle school, they didn't let the weather get the best of them Friday morning. They always have music and everybody's dancing and the mood is great, and it's a fun, they make it as good as it could possibly be. So, thank you.
Ms. Glass?
Yeah, I echo everybody else's sentiments. It was super exciting to hear the things that Huntertown and Simmons are doing and have continued to do. I know something that's been a big excitement at our house this week is that the specials classrooms are open. So I had a really excited art student today, and hopefully she can get back into the library and play some instruments soon. I know that's very exciting, and so I'm excited to see these normal things kind of change back a little bit. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for the update, Mr. Hawkins, and thank you for arranging to have the principals come and talk to us tonight. The next item on the agenda is graduation, and that was added by Ms. Class.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, I know Mr. Hawkins just kind of gave us an update, just maybe to update the community a little bit. I know that it's obviously a very fluid situation, so nothing's set in stone, but just I've had some parents, I know the board had some parents reach out, and I've had some other parents and students ask as well. just kind of what are the preliminary things, kind of what is your district staff looking at, at least for this year's class, for the class of 2021, just to kind of keep everybody in the loop.
Well, as you said, things are very fluid. I do want to make sure that this is still a school decision in terms of graduation.
I think we voted on that last year.
Right, and the only reason is because then I think that helps when you get parents who have questions or whatever, then those can be referenced then back to the school. And so then that takes you out of the middle and maybe prevents any kind of miscommunication that may occur or misunderstanding about things. We do have a location and a date. However, we don't know what capacity limitations are going to be at this point in time. Right now it's at 25%. And that will make it extremely difficult to have an in-person graduation. However, the school will be surveying next week, I believe. I think their plan was to do it right before spring break, to kind of gauge interest from both students and parents as, okay, if we are at this capacity, would you want to still do in person, or would you rather do what we did last year? If the capacity goes to here, would you want to do in person, or would you want to do what we did last year? So at least we kind of know how we need to proceed. That's the hard part. I don't know when capacity limits are going to change, and what they may be in April may be different in May. And so it's extremely hard to say we are going to do this, because we don't necessarily have our own facility that would allow us to do that. And so again, I think we are trying to prepare for whatever circumstance may arise. So
where did the 25% capacity guidance is coming from?
That was shared by the horse park.
Okay. All right.
And that was in an email to the superintendents of the districts. And see, that's the other thing, is that we've got 3 other high schools that will utilize the facility the same weekend we are. And so it just makes it a lot more complex. So, but that's what they shared with us. Now, again, I'm very hopeful that that's going to go up, but that's the number as of last week.
Okay.
Do you know exactly what that number looks like right now? I mean, I know it's very fluid, but
25% would be about 1,300 people in the arena.
Okay.
Which is quite small.
Yeah.
And I think we're already going to be looking at some kind of ticketed event. Okay. I don't think it's going to be anybody that wants to come can come. It's just how many tickets are we looking at?
Right.
And so obviously we want it to be the best experience that it can be, but we're also going to have to make sure that we follow the guidelines that are in place. And again, the fact that we are using an outside facility, we're going to be bound by what they tell us.
Right. And how many students do we currently have in the senior class that would be graduating this year?
This is a little bit larger class. I think it's in the 320 or 330 range.
Something like that.
So if you think about that, that's not a lot of guests.
It's not.
And we also have to include our staff who attend and all of that as part of that allotment. So it's again, what we have it reserved, and so that's a good thing. But I think we also want to find out from our students and from our families what they would prefer given those circumstances.
Thank you.
So would it be fair to say at this point then, for the parents that are watching that sent the email suggesting, not specifically requesting, but just making the suggestion that we had a combined graduation between the 2020 and the 2021 senior class, that is absolutely not a possibility?
even if the capacity goes up, I really think that would be, it would very much limit our 2021 students in terms of the numbers of guests that they could have. And I'm not sure, because we'll probably have to do chairs on the floor spaced. I'm not sure that you could potentially do that if you tried to combine two different graduating classes.
Certainly
And
understand.
I'd just like to point out that I have received several emails and people contacting me from the 2020 class, and the consensus from what I get from the 2021 class or the 2020 class is that, well, some of them would like to have some sort of formal graduation where they can walk with their peers. The majority of them have said that, kind of the same as the public comment that we got tonight, that Elaine read, that they've moved on from that. They're into their college career, or their job, whatever, they've moved on. So I don't want to leave us hanging tonight in tonight's meeting with the parents who have requested that we could possibly do a joint graduation for them. I feel like we need to just give them an answer this evening if we can, so that they're not hanging on another week waiting.
Sure, and I mean, I think all of us can understand those parents that would like for their kids to have that traditional experience and be able to do a graduation ceremony, but with the restrictions that we're looking at, that doesn't sound like it's going to be a possibility, especially with such a big graduating class. That's a big class. So it does not sound like that's going to be something that we could accommodate. And Mr. Hawkins is correct in pointing out that last year, when graduation was a bit in flux in trying to figure these things out, the board did vote to leave those decisions with Mr. Hawkins and the high school principal. So short of a board action changing that, which I don't think anyone is advocating for tonight, that will be his decision to make going forward.
Be a school decision.
School decision.
I just offer input.
No, I understand. I just want to make that clear. Ms. McCown.
Yeah, I have a few kind of questions. I mean, I know this isn't really a board topic. This is more for just the students and parents. What is the date tentatively? I mean, what are you looking at right now?
We have traditionally graduated on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
And so that is the date we have reserved. However, I want people to understand that is not set in stone. So please don't go and invite all your relatives
Absolutely.
in at this point in time. So
Don't buy plane tickets.
And so the two options that you're looking at right now is Alltech Arena, right? That's the place that Alltech Arena, and then the cafeteria. Those are the two options that you all are looking at.
The model that we utilized last year, I heard a lot of positive comments from both students and from families who were able to participate, and we felt like that was the best option that we had last year. I'm not sure that we have any other venues that we could potentially use that would be better than Alltech.
Right.
So those are the two different models that are being at least considered right now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have any, I mean, of course, I think most students would agree we want a graduation, you know, as normal as possible, which clearly is, we're kind of far away from as normal as possible. I love that a survey is going out so students can put input. Next week, I think if we can try to get people together in the same building, under the same roof, I think that would be the best way for the 2021 class to get some closure, for sure.
And Ms. McCown, I want to thank you for your input always. There's actually a matter being discussed in Frankfurt today in removing the student representative from the Kentucky Board of Education. And I think that's a shame. I think that we have gained so much insight from our student representatives, and I think when you're here to share with us your insight and those members that we've had before you, it's always been a welcome point for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And how has your time back been since you got to start back with 5 days?
It's been great. Waking up early's been a little bit it's been a little difficult, but being back just in school, like you said, Mr. Hawkins, it's completely different, but it feels the same. I mean, I see my friends, I see my teachers, everybody's just happy to see. It's fulfilling. It's fulfilling for sure. So I've enjoyed it.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Hawkins has notified us that there is not a need to go into executive session or to return from that executive session. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you for your time tonight.